This post explains why many expats cannot live on 800 US a month in the Philippines, but others can and do. While I explain this, I will show you videos of the Philippines. We're here now during the coronavirus stay-at-home order in Dumaguete, Philippines. This is Dan of the Vagabond Awake YouTube channel. I travel the world and write reports about the best retire cheap in paradise locations. You can find my reports here on Vagabond Buddha. I've been to 65 countries so far. I shared a video on my YouTube channel yesterday called Retired in Philippines 800 USD a month interview. It featured an expat who lives here now named Calvin. A man named Robert commented as follows: "Didn't even watch your video as your title inscription caught my eye. $800 living in the Philippines? Rest assured, you are only existing and not living. Maybe in your video you have a better explanation, but the title caught my eye. I lived in the Philippines in the year 2000 on 1800 US a month, and I wasn't living it up, by no means. Of course, I take into consideration that the dollar peso rate was less at the time." I responded to that comment as follows. In writing on the webpage below that video, I wrote, "Vagabond Awake first, thanks for the contrary data point. I believe Robert is telling the truth." That's the name of the man who left the message. "I believe it is a truth he has experienced, and he is trying to help some people who will live the same truth if they move to the Philippines. I know personally because it was how I started my first year as an expat over a decade ago. But rather than try to explain how I was able to get my budget down in the text message here, I will make and post a video tomorrow why many expats can't live on 800 USD a month in the Philippines. My intention will not be to deny Robert's truth, but to explain how I evolved over the years to be more like Calvin, the man featured in the video he was criticizing. Thanks for commenting and watching, everyone." My comment said, "You're helping the business grow and my dreams come true." And special thanks to Calvin and Robert for bringing life to this information. Fast Dan. And that completed my reply. And so here's that video I promised in that comment. My intention for this video and post is to explain why Robert is unable to live in the Philippines for less than $1,800 per month. If you're like Robert, you will also be unable to live in the Philippines for less than $1,800 per month. And I'm not criticizing here, I'm just explaining the difference. If you have any of these habits, which I'll explain now, you may want to just stay at home if you don't have the $1,800 per month to spend that Robert's talking about. Since I don't know Robert personally, I will be describing a generic example of an expat living in the Philippines that needs $1,800 per month to live here. Our generic Robert will likely have one or more of the following habits that will keep his budget in the $1,800 US per month range. Now, the actual Robert who left the note above may not have any of these habits. I'm just talking about a generic Robert that I have met all over the world, expats that I've met all over the world that are unable to live on budgets that any middle class local could live on in each of the countries I've been in. These are habits I've seen. After I describe each of these budget busting habits, I'll give you an example way to behave differently so you can get the benefits of the behavior without busting your budget. As I discuss these bad habits, I'll refer back to another video I made about 2 weeks ago called Top 10 Mistakes Made During International Retirement. Okay, and again, I'm not criticizing Robert here and not saying he should even do any of this. I'm just saying if you want to get below his budget, here's likely what the behavior is that you might have and how to change it. Okay, on my top 10 mistakes, there's a link here. trying to recreate your old life in a new country. That's basically what people do when they have a budget that high, when they come somewhere like the Philippines. Now his budget's not outrageous, $1,800 a month, but he surely could beat it with some of these changes, I'm sure, to talk about here, and then other people comment and have found lower budgets. First thing is restaurants. Back home on Thursday through Sunday evenings, when he is back in the States, generic Robert enjoys meeting his friends out to socialize. They don't get super drunk or anything. They just have a few beers, watch sports, and at a restaurant in the neighborhood. They usually have dinner before they head home at that or another restaurant or bar. This behavior, the beers, a couple of beers and a dinner 4 times a week is about $60 a week or $240 a month. That's typical behavior, not atypical behavior in the US. Here's what an expat with that behavior does when they come to the Philippines in restaurants. When generic Robert got to the Philippines, the local restaurants served food he had never seen at home. He didn't know what to order, but it wasn't a problem because he found a few restaurants where he saw other expats, top 10 mistakes at 11:19. He saw things, other expats, and when he looked at the menu, he saw things on the menu that sounded like home. But when he tried them, they didn't really taste like home. But he kept going back to these expat restaurants because he missed his home food, even though this wasn't quite like home. Okay, this expat behavior costs the beers at $3 for 2 beers and dinner at $6 instead of $8, 4 times a week is $36 a week or $144 a month. That's a typical, actually modest expat restaurant behavior. Here's what local behavior might be. Local Joe, or someone more like me or Calvin, likes to cook because he can control the quality of his food. So he only goes to his favorite local restaurants once or twice a week. He's gotten to know the local foods and even has a favorite dish that he orders when he eats in local restaurants with other locals, and those cost $1.50 per meal instead of the $6 per meal that you'll find in the expat restaurants. Local Joe has a few beers at home after his meal or at a local friend's house. Beers in the stores are 60 cents. So this behavior in the Philippines costs for a couple beers and dinner in a local restaurant 2 nights a week is $5.40 a week, which is $20 a month. So the local Joe restaurant savings, if you compare the expat restaurant budget of $144 a month to the local Joe budget of $21.60, there's $122 per month savings there. Okay, let's look at bar behavior. Back home on Thursdays and Saturdays, generic Robert likes to head to one of his favorite bars in town and have a few drinks. Thursday's date night, so he brings his girlfriend with him if he is dating someone. Generic Robert likes beer, but his girlfriend likes drinks with straws or umbrellas in them. Depending on whether they go to a pool hall or live music venue, the drink prices vary. They usually have 3 drinks each and head home. Beers are $4, umbrella drinks are $6. But Saturday night is guys' night, so generic Robert and a few friends go watch some live music, shoot some pool, or watch the ladies at a dance club. Generic Robert usually has about 3 drinks and usually ends up buying a few umbrella drinks for a new lady friend in the bar. So the USA costs Thursdays and Saturdays. Thursdays as date night, 3 drinks each, $4 for beers, $6 for umbrella drinks, which is $30 a week, or $10 times 3 and $120 a month. Saturdays out with the guys, beers are $4. He has 3 and he buys 2 umbrella drinks for women he chats it up with, and so that's $24 a week or $96 a month. His total bar tab is $216 a month. What happens to generic Robert when he shows up in the Philippines? Generic Robert never really found a local bar he felt at home in. He did meet some expats that told him about an expat bar that has beautiful local women hanging out there. He loved all the eye candy and couldn't believe how cheap the beers were compared to home. So he had no qualms about hanging out there 3 or 4 nights of the week. Plus he found expats there, and they could talk about how things were so different here as compared to home. That's top 10 mistakes at 11 minutes 19 seconds. Link provided. You can listen to that if you want to. He enjoyed learning about the local culture and problems from other expats that had lived here longer. The beers were so cheap, he usually had 4 or 5. So he would go to various expat bars 3 or 4 nights per week. Generic Robert bought beers for a few of the new local girls that he met here in the expat bars in the Philippines. Beers cost $1.50 each. This is where Generic Robert meets girls. So, expat costs. Per night, he had 4 beers. His new lady friends had 3 at $1.50 each. That's $10.50 per night. 4 nights per week is $40 and $42. 4 weeks per month, with that behavior, is $169 per month. Okay, what is the local behavior that you could replace that with? Local Joe watched the locals and realized that normal girls weren't showing up in the bars at night as much. So he put a profile up online and started just chatting with locals when he was in the market. When he saw a pretty normal girl in the market, he would say, "Excuse me, do you know how to cook this vegetable? I've never seen it before." He would just strike up conversation. "What is an easy local dish to cook? I'm trying to learn about local favorite dishes. Do you know anybody that could teach me how to cook this?" Eventually he made a few local friends that liked to cook and talk about food. His new friends also taught him about the best local restaurants in town, contrary to the expat restaurants. He eventually ended up eating in locals' homes and learning all about the local culture and the foods. He also invited locals over to his house to try foreign dishes that he knew how to cook from home to keep them interested. He also noticed that the locals liked to go for evening walks in the park and along the waterfront. Wherever he went, people seemed genuinely friendly, and they somehow knew he was a foreigner. His clothing, his skin, whatever. And they seemed interested in where he was from and what brought him here. Eventually, he found himself in a relationship with a local woman that he may never have met in an expat bar. Some people he met enjoyed drinking, but it was less often, and usually in people's homes where the beers were much cheaper, 60 cents per beer instead of $1.50 per beer, and he found himself drinking 10 beers per week instead of the 16 or 20 beers he would have had in the expat bars. And so he's spending $24 a month drinking beer, and the food he was eating in restaurants we already talked about. So let's look here. Local Joe's savings on bars. The expat Generic Robert was spending $169 per month in expat bars for himself, and the local Joe behavior was spending $24 per month for 60-cent beers. The savings, $125 per month in bar tab savings. Okay, rents. Back home, Generic Robert sold his home before moving to the Philippines. It was about 1,700 square feet, and the mortgage payment was $1,750 per month. When he moved to the Philippines, expat rents. Generic Robert was single, and he wanted to attract a beautiful woman when he moved to the Philippines. So he was willing to pay a little more than average rents. Plus, why not? The rents were so cheap in the Philippines, and he wanted to impress the woman he hoped to meet here. Top 10 mistakes at 8 minutes and 27 seconds. Link provided. Plus, he felt he deserved to have a nice place. Plus, he wanted to live in an area that had more women to choose from, a little larger city. He didn't want to be in a rural community. He was afraid he would get bored. Okay, so his rent is $425 a month for that expat rent. Local rents. Local Joe wanted to be in a smaller community where the air was a little cleaner and he was a little closer to nature. He wanted a place that was clean and nice, but nothing that was so much nicer than his local friends. They would feel uncomfortable when they were at his house, or that he would stick out in the community. So his rents are $250 per month. Local Joe, savings, $425, he's only paying $250, so he's saving $175 per month in rent savings compared to expat, generic Robert. Okay, utilities. Back home, generic Robert is happy to be out of that expensive home. He was paying heat in the winter, AC in the summer, plus the internet, cable, and water. Things were expensive. He was costing him somewhere around $125 to $175 a month for all of those utilities. Expat utilities. Generic Robert's apartment here in the Philippines has 3 air conditioning units, one in each of the 2 bedrooms and one in the living room, and he runs 2 of them, one of them for 8 hours at night when he sleeps in the bedroom, and the other for 4 hours per day in the living room during the day. He also pays the internet, cable, and water. Its utility costs are $110 per month. Okay, local rents. Local Joe, the place is on the ground floor and doesn't have as many windows and sliding glass doors as the expat apartment in the high-rise, but it has a nice little patio, and he has a spot outdoors where he can sit and relax and have a little barbecue and a place to sit and relax outdoors. Local Joe savings, $110. His utilities are only $50, $110 minus $50. Local Joe is saving $60 per month on utilities. Okay, transportation. Back home, generic Robert sold his car and canceled his insurance before moving to the Philippines, so he no longer has a car payment or insurance. He was paying $320 per month for his car payment and insurance. Okay, expat transportation. Generic Robert decided to rent a newer high-end scooter because he wanted the extra power and wanted to have a snazzy-looking scooter to meet women with. Expat costs $120 rent per month plus $20 in food. He's paying $140 a month for transportation. Local transportation. Local Joe just paid $500 cash for an ugly used scooter that runs great. Local cost $20 per month in fuel. Okay, Local Joe savings $140 minus 20. He's saving $120 a month on transportation. Okay, groceries. Top 10 mistakes at 17 minutes and 13 seconds. First, generic Robert finds everything he needs in the local Walmart for bottom dollar. His groceries and whatnot are $65 per week in the Walmart. He buys everything he needs there. Okay, expat groceries. Generic Robert shows up in the Philippines. He eats out more in the Philippines because the restaurants are so cheap, but he still pays premium prices for non-perishable food brands he used all of his life in the USA. He doesn't find them in the local market, so he has to purchase them in the expat grocery stores. He doesn't understand what the local non-perishable foods are. He doesn't take the time to learn, so he shops only in the expat grocery store. He's able to buy some fresh fruits and vegetables in the local market, but that's the extent of his savings. His expat costs are $40 a week or $160 a month for groceries to remain familiar with what he knew in his time growing up and living in the U.S. Okay, local markets. Local Joe stays out of the expat grocery stores whenever possible. He has learned how to cook local foods and where to buy them in the local market. He does buy a few odds and ends in the expat grocery store, but that is more of an exception than a rule. His local costs, $15 a week or $60 a month. His savings for Local Joe, instead of buying $160 worth of groceries, he's spending $60. He saves $100 a month on grocery stores. by staying out of the expat grocery stores. Local Joe's savings. He saves $122 a month in restaurants. He saved $125 in bar bills. He saves $175 in rents, $60 in utilities, $120 in transportation, and $100 in groceries. The total savings of local Joe, because he's willing to learn about the place he's at, what the lifestyles are of the people there, and the foods they eat, and he's more curious, less interested in what other expats are talking about in expat bars and restaurants, and getting more integrated in with the locals, and it saves him $722 per month. You can easily see how a few more beers or another meal or two in the expat restaurants would get him to the $800 per month savings he would need to make to be down at Calvin's cost of living. Now, I hope I didn't offend anyone with this, with generic Robert, and some of you might be willing to save some of this money, but not all of it. Some people like to go to bars and meet people, meet expats, and there's nothing wrong with that. I did it myself when I first moved to India. I haven't really done it in more than 5 years. I don't really hang out in the expat bars or the expat restaurants, just because I find it so interesting now to learn about whatever culture I'm in. But when you're first in a new country, it can be very comforting. So there's no problem with expat bars or restaurants. I just wanted to give you an example of how there might be such a difference between what Calvin's doing, who's, I would argue, is more integrated into society, and what our example generic Robert does when he comes to the Philippines. And again, no offense to Robert intended. I'm sure some of these may be true, some may not, but I don't know him personally, and none of this may be true for him. He may just be a deep sea fisherman and renting expensive boats to go out on the week, and he's not really that high at 1,800. I mean, you could easily see how a few of these items could you bring me up to 1,300 a month, 1,400, 1,500. But it is possible, and people do stay in the 800 to 1,000 range without any trouble. Thanks again. Okay, thanks for stopping by Vagabond Awake. If you'd like to learn how I fired my boss and traveled the world since 2007, grab a free copy of my ebook at Vagabond Buddha. There's a link here on the webpage. Just click more information below this video and come and get your free ebook and all my notes from this and all of the videos that we post. There's a more information link below each video. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.